HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambi. With Bambi, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambi's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambi starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambi can take off your plate. Go to Bambi.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambi.com. Type in Accelerate.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business. Whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing, guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken audio entertainment and information. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Get a free book when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. This podcast is continuing to gain recognition as a resource for small business owners, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals. From Inc.com to MSNBC's Your Business to Fit Small Business, Proven, there's a whole host of organizations that have included Accelerate Your Business Growth on their list of the best podcasts to listen to. We are honored by that and tremendously grateful for it. And we also know that that is due in large part to the guests that we have on this podcast. These folks come on, they give their expertise and their time to help all of you do better things in your businesses. Today is no different. Today my guest is Brit Poulson. Brit is the author of The Clarity Compass and has coached business leaders from CEOs of Fortune 500 companies to solopreneurs in applying the Clarity Compass to be more efficient and effective decision makers. 30 years of listening to the deepest struggles of clients has allowed Brit to unlock the mystery of why some people excel in leadership and others struggle with conflict and lack of influence. He says leading doesn't have to be filled with struggle and stress anymore. Improving your decision-making skills is key. Released in 2016, The Clarity Compass is a best-selling book that aids the reader to become a more confident and strategic decision maker, something I'm sure all of us aspire to if we haven't gotten there already. Thank you so much for joining me today, Brit.
Diane, it's great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. This is a great subject. When I got your information and I was looking through your bio, and I sort of chuckled to myself because I thought, boy, it is so true that people struggle, that they find leadership more of a challenge than something, a positive experience. So I'm really glad that we're going to be having this conversation.
Yay.
So you say that how you decide is as important as what you decide. And I would like to know really what you mean by that and why that is the case.
Yeah, because if we just make random decisions, then we switch them quickly, we switch back. But when we make a decision with a process that's deeper, our conviction is higher in that decision, and it's more likely to be sustaining and drive us through. In fact, I was working with a client just yesterday where one of the things we were talking about was she's in charge of a huge project, one of the top selling games actually that's out there right now. And one of the things that's happening is she's making decisions herself, and they're great decisions, but some of the executives aren't being included on those decisions. So yeah, the decision's being made, but she wasn't getting some of the buy-in, and as a consequence, some of they don't have the momentum. Some of the meetings aren't going as smoothly as they would be if she had gone through the process of involving more people in making maybe some of the same decisions, but doing it in a more methodical way.
Oh, that is interesting. So she's not getting buy-in necessarily from people because it's like she's telling them this is what we're going to do as opposed to saying, let's figure out what we're going to do.
Yes. Yeah. And not even, and just more talking to the people that are underneath as opposed to the people that are above, just trying to move things forward. And actually, to this person's credit, is that they're a doer. They're a make it happen kind of person. Awesome leader. And here's an example of, I don't want to get too deep too quick in the show, but it's like the assumption is like it's easier for me to just drive things than to go have some political conversation or some harried conversation or nuanced conversation. Let me just go out and do it. And many leaders, I see that they're great at getting things done, but not having the conversations that help set up good decisions.
So I guess my question would be, so then are they really great leaders? Because aren't great leaders people who bring people or I'm not really sure how I want to say this, like bring people with them through a process as opposed to just going ahead and making decisions and doing things?
That's a great point. So I'd say that the complexity here is that on the tactical decisions, the person is highly involving of other people, in the even the medium range. But for some, and this is a person actually who's grown tremendously and moving toward the strategic. And that's where it gets a little more harried. So actually, they are great at involving other people and actually being inspirational in their involvement, in their conversations. So it's in the work is for all of the folks who are listening is, I'm sure there's ways that think, oh, I'm a good leader. I get a little stressed here, but I'm a good leader. But it really is to start the discernment that I think your question invites is, I'm a great leader here and here and here, but where, what's my blind spots? What's missing in my decision making? And that's why I use this as the first example is that in so many ways, this person is engaged and warm and inspiring and cares about the people and visionary. But there's this one place with the strategic level, they're not having some of the more strategic conversations that would help make the decisions better. And as you're saying, you have the buy-in increase.
So what do you think I have a couple of questions there. I want to go back to the blind spot thing, but is there a reason why there are places where some leaders are not good at involving others in decisions? Is it like a fear thing, or is it a lack of confidence that they're going to be able to? What is it?
Yeah, that's. Actually, even that question starts to get into the blind spots as well.
Oh, good.
Because there's something there where my premise is that the world is too complex for us to understand, and so we have shortcuts and heuristics and so there's places where we're good, and then there's just places where we're not. And egos wise, we'd rather not look at them. We'd rather be confidently moving forward. It's like I'm good here. So it's a defensive place where, yeah, I'm, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm anxious. I'm defended. That's, in a sense, it's not me. We start defining what we're to do by what we're good at. And I'm good at these things, and I don't even consider that I should have had that conversation with Bill over there because, well, I just don't need to. Bill knows what I'm doing. Actually,
Right.
this is the case. Actually, the conversation I just had yesterday, the leader said, yeah, there's enough clarity, and I'm like, really? Because it sounds like there's some confusion. And they're like, no, I've had the conversations, and as we pushed it, it's like, holy cow, yeah, I should, you said, I should have had those conversations, and I thought it was clear enough to go. And to your question, is having those other conversations is a little bit out of the comfort zone, enough to dismiss it mentally. Not, I mean, if she considered it, she'd be like, oh yeah, I should probably have the conversation, but it was blocked even from consideration.
Okay. That's so interesting. So, do all leaders have blind spots, do you think?
Yes. I mean, it's the severity of the blind spots are different, because so there's some leaders I've been working with for 15 years that they still call me in and work with me. And so, where actually I'm working with somebody right now where I was originally called in because it's like, hey, we need to, we'd like to keep this person, but they're about to be fired. And start working. And this happens all the time. Actually, I start working with people. It's like, I didn't even know I was in trouble. And the CEO says, no, I've had many conversations with him. And this is the first time I've heard some of this. So those are the more egregious blind spots. But even that same person who I've been working with for a long time now, who's actually gotten a number of promotions, taken on big regions, really is one of, I see him as King Arthur at this point. He's so good at this point. But he still has the blind spots. They're more subtle, but the more powerful, the more power we have, the more control we have, the more negative the blind spots become. The same blind spot at somebody's staff level position is not going to be seen hardly, where if they're CEO, that blind spot radiates out through the organization in subtle but impactful ways.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like they're more dangerous the more authority someone has.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like some of my role is to give some nicer people more power and to make some powerful people nicer people.
Less. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to step off. Okay. So So the Clarity Compass, am I correct that it's a tool that has been developed through these experiences that you've had with people where they just really don't have clarity around how they're decision making?
Yes. Yeah. Well, if you asked any leader and you say, hey, were you clear when you made that decision? They'll say, oh, yeah. Here's the 6 points that we looked for the pros and the 22 for the negatives. And there's a clarity there, but it's those blind spots. It's what we don't see, the assumptions that we're making that we don't realize that are really biting us in the behind there because we think we're clear. And the example I just said, oh, yeah, we're clear. I'm like, really?
Yeah. Okay. So when someone, okay, now I'm processing in my head and I'm realizing that so many of us think we have process for our decision making, and in some cases we probably do, and in other cases we don't.
Yeah.
So, right. So sometimes those decisions are not the most effective. And that's really what we're going for. We're going for effective, efficient decision making.
Right. Yeah. And I'd say that it's really I'd say there's always blind spots or things that we don't consider. There's just too much information out there. So there's always things we're not considering. Sometimes it's minor and incidental and doesn't hurt us, and other times it's egregious, when we have groupthink or just our blind spots in our own minds, that some of the decisions, it amazes me sometimes that the decisions that folks are making.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a decision, maybe it's from a past client or something, but a decision that was really bad and like dangerous for the organization?
Yeah, I'll give you. Yeah, here I'll get same leader, two different decisions. So building an organization, a lot of pressure to move from unprofitable, brought in actually, again, a high caliber leader brought in to actually turn an organization around. And one of the decisions that they just, I'd say where their blind spot is, they're just kind of like, let's do business as usual. Let's use executive recruiters to bring in new folks. And they just kept doing this and doing this and doing this. And they kept bringing in people who were not good fits with the organization. And yet this decision is a good example of blind spot, because like, hey, well, that's what you do. You bring in, if you have a need in the organization, you just keep, using executive recruiters and bring folks in. And at some point he woke up to, it's like, this is not working. It's like, my intention is to have a cohesive team that fits with the culture, because they had an awesome culture. It just wasn't profitable. And so they bring in outside people to make it more profitable, but then they just didn't fit with the culture. So then he eventually shifted and said, okay, we're going to actually grow our people, so that the people we know are high caliber folks in the organization, and we're going to grow them and really invest in the people that are here and help them move up in the organization more quickly. And with that decision, they kept the culture. The folks in the organization were thrilled that they were getting the attention, and that it's like, we count, we matter. It was the night and day. One person said, oh, we've been talking about people coming first for a long time, but now we're finally doing it. And so there's a place where it wasn't a bad decision. It was like what they had done before. It's what most corporations do. But he said, we're going to take all the money that went into executive recruiters and we're going to put it in developing our people. And they save money, and the organization is much better off. So that's one example. I have a second one, but I don't know if that's, yeah.
Okay, no, that is great. That I totally understand that, and I think that's really good for the audience to hear, because hiring is such a just to stick on that for a second, it is such a challenging thing. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to somebody before this conversation who said they are trying to hire for a part-time position, and they thought every time they think they have someone who they're going to make an offer to, they learn something about that person that they're not going to fit with their culture. It's just not going to work out. And so, thank goodness they're finding out ahead of time, before they're actually there. Right?
Yeah, that's the good news, right? Yeah,
so bad, right? In the meantime, they don't have anybody in that position.
Yeah, actually, can I just add on to that, Diane? Because
sure.
to that point is that pretty much every organization I'm in right now, they can't find people, and so they're actually, even if it's not a culture fit, one of the things I see them doing is actually, it's like, we'll take a hit to the culture just because there's that seat's been empty for 9 or 10 months, and so they'll take a man or woman who's just not quite the right fit, just because the job market's just so tight for really great leaders.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's so. What do you think of that decision?
It's I have a bit of a bias is that part of the skill that I'm wanting to work with in the leaders is this a person, if they're not initially a fit, we're not but we're not getting anybody, and actually it's burning our people out that's here. So it's a tough situation, and so we're burning our other people out because nobody's in that position. That's what it was just yesterday to say there's one person who's actually doing 4 people's jobs, because of different moves and transfers, and actually all those were actually good things. Nobody had quit in this situation, but still, it's like the person needs those positions to be refilled, and they're not finding the people. So the discernment, I mean, to me, the clarity compass in this work is all about greater discernment. And so as I'm interviewing, can I determine they're not currently a cultural fit, but with can I develop them? Can I as the direct manager develop them into a culture fit? Can we bring in a coach? Can we do some training? Is what kind of, is it a square peg in a round hole, or is it a square peg in a almost square hole? We just have to do a little filing to get it to work. So it's not I think that's the problem, is it's not perfect, but that's part of the challenge is it's not going to be. That's why folks are, Amazon's looking, I'm in Seattle. Amazon was looking at, headquarters elsewhere, pulling more people in India. The people are trying to just we just need to get good folks. And it's that desperation. I think what you're asking here is, what's the discernment if we're hiring somebody where it's good enough?
Right. Right. Or do you set up, I have a friend whose family owns some restaurants, and they just bought another one. And she was talking about this challenge that she's having. And I said to her, in some cases, I think you have to set up like a farm team where you just, part of your business structure is almost like apprenticeship. You're bringing them in, you're training them, you're weeding out the ones who aren't up to it, so that you can train, you can grow your own, basically.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah. I think it's a good question, because even now companies at the same time are trying to operate leaner, and so they won't do what you just suggested to your friend. It's like, let's just hire the over here, let's hire the minimum number of people we can and stretch the people as far as we can, which is great in terms of profit. But then if you lose somebody, which people are, then you're in trouble. I think your farm mentality, even if it may be a little bit more expensive to the other restaurants, in the end, we're keeping great people. We're ferreting through who we don't want to keep. I think it's a great metaphor for all the organizations. It's like, I need to invest in my people.
Right. Right. And sometimes you just have to build your own. And so, right? If they're not there, then you got to grow them. So, like vegetables. Okay. So, sorry, it just popped into my head. Yeah.
It's very concrete. I like it. You grow your own vegetables. You don't have to do the
Exactly. So, okay, wait. I'm going to take a quick sponsor break, and then I have more questions for you. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is happy to be sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. They have over 150,000 titles to choose from, and you can listen to them on any device, including whatever you're hearing us on right now. If you sign up at our link, which is audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, you get 1 free audiobook and a 1-month trial of the service. Some examples of books you can listen to on audible.com are 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall and The Go-Giver by Bob Berg, both of whom have been guests on this podcast. So visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, explore the books that are of interest to you, and receive 1 free audiobook when you sign up for the trial. Today, we're talking with Brit Poulson about how to become a better decision maker. And Brit, I should have asked you if your book is on Audible.
It is not. That's one of the things that is on my list to do, because I listened a lot of Audible on my own, and clients are like, "When are you going to get it on there?" So it's on the to-do list for sure.
Terrific. All right. Well, let me know when it is, and I'll add you to that.
Oh, thanks.
Commercial. Okay. So now let's talk some about the Clarity Compass method.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? And then can you give me an example of how a small business owner might use it?
Yeah. So I like to think of it as simple in that it's 2 polarities. One polarity is intentions to action, meaning I want salt, my food's not salty enough. I say pass the salt. That's the intention, is to have more salty steak or vegetables that I've just grown in my garden, or so I just say, hey, pass the salt. It's really that simple, except for as a business owner, then it becomes more, my intentions become more complex. I want to be profitable. I want to move into new markets. But there's a clarity that's required around my intentions where, for example, most people are mixing several intentions all at once. And I'll come back to that in an example. And then, so that's intention to action. And then the second polarity that crosses that for these complex decisions is the separation of facts versus stories. You mean how much is something a fact that is witnessed, is observed, it's concrete, a videotape could pick it up, versus a story, which is my opinion, belief, judgment about something that's happened. So there it's like, Sally was rude with me. It's like, well, what is that rude? Oh, she raised her voice. Well, how loud really was it? Maybe she just got excited. So the story has us all in what we make up in terms of what's important, what's not. And the facts are, I see a pen in front of me. It's sitting right next to the mouse. It's an inch away. I see a coworker looking into her computer. Now she's looking at me, smiling, just moved her hair, with her hand. And so all those are facts. And so we collapse facts and stories quickly as we go through life, and then we think we're right. And that's one of the things I'm really working with is when we think we're right, maybe we should take a second look.
That's so great. That's really so great, because I think most people live in the world of stories and not in the world of facts.
Yeah. I mean, it really provides meaning. I mean, it provides understanding, and it helps us navigate, and even the decision about what's important, where to go, and what employees to keep and not keep. It's all based more on stories, and then we have to ground ourselves and, okay, what are the facts? What happened actually? Yeah,
right. That is very interesting to me, because I think part of the reason that business owners and leaders in general, really, it's more than just small business owners, but leaders and managers don't have those crucial or uncomfortable conversations, calm, whatever you are, is because they're living in the story and not in the facts.
Yeah.
So whenever when you let the facts lead, mm-hmm. It's easier to have the conversation because it's unemotional.
Yeah. And I think it's trying to decide what, it's an example comes up where somebody's working with got a bad employee engagement score. So that's why they brought me in. And one of the examples that was given was, that this guy would go up to the cubicles, and there'd be two people that would be there, and every day he'd walk up to two of his people work to him, and he'd say, hey, how about those hawks, and have conversation, and then leave and not say good morning to the other folks. And in the story that he had was, he had something in common with these two folks. They really liked him and liked talking to him. And these other two folks, he just didn't have anything in common with, and that they really just didn't want to talk to him. It wasn't that he was intentionally neglecting them. It was that he was actually thinking, if they're uncomfortable with me, or we don't have anything in common, they actually don't want to talk to me. And over months of this, it was kind of like they felt like they were second-class citizens. And so there's an example where the facts are, he'd go up and, he'd see smiling from the one, he'd see the other folks not smiling. The story he made up is they just don't want to talk to me. When the reality is they did, but they just, they were making up, he didn't want to talk to them. And it's these little things that happen over and over again that create our business environment.
Wow. Good or bad?
Yeah. Actually, can I share another one with you just real quickly?
Sure, please do.
I was working with a guy, and he wanted to take his business. And so this is a small business owner, and he was actually really successful, but there's a way he knew he could get to the, to this next level. He had a financial goal that he wasn't making. And it was so interesting that we realized in our, through work in the Clarity Compass that he's looking at the facts, and he wasn't having success with the people who were most wealthy. So those are facts. And he was making up stories about how they just didn't appreciate his product and so forth. But then we got to a place where actually he didn't like wealthy people. He's like, he grew up poor and he found them intimidating, and he had judgments, even though he was relatively wealthy at this point himself. It's like he didn't like wealthy people, and that steered his business. I mean, there were millions of dollars he was leaving on the table because he at some deeper level, he didn't even, I mean, he knew it at some level, but he didn't realize he was making decisions based on it and interacting based on it. So there's a place where he had all the facts, but the story he was missing is, no, actually I have a dislike for these people, and it's impacting who I go talk to and how I talk to them.
That's incredible.
Yeah, well, that's why I love my job. It's because it's unearthing these things that are actually helping all of us create our realities. It's like when you said we all have. Do you think we all have blind spots? And yes, we all have them, and they impact and they seep out. What we think we're holding in our heads is seeping out and impacting our businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So if someone is applying the compass, is applying this tool, are there stumbling blocks that they might encounter as they're going through it, as they're trying to use it?
Yeah, is that one of the stumbling blocks is actually in the intentions, and part of that is actually scoping. Because the stumbling block is I've got too many intentions. It's somebody who wants to, I'm looking at a client, list of clients, and just going to pick one at random. It's a client who's actually, I want to keep my employees, and so I want to make them happy, and I want to figure out how I can have them paid more, and I want to help them, build the team spirit, and I'm doing all that with one Clarity Compass, or I'm doing all that in one decision-making process. And so and I just see it all the time, or in meetings. I mean, if you start waking up to this, you'll just see more and more clearly how this team is trying to solve three problems at once, and they bounce back and forth. And so I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, and I still am waking up to new ways that I'm watching. It's like, oh, we're solving that, and then just as that one almost is solved, somebody will create an objection, about, oh, okay, well, what about this, what happened last Tuesday at the all hands? And it's like, it's related because this topic was brought up, but it's really distraction. And so in terms of the intention, one of the hangups there is, how do I have a pure intention and scope it to where I'm going to solve this problem and not try to solve 6 different things? That's a big hang up. And then also just not realizing, that's for the one polarity. And then the other is not realizing that how much I really am in story, that I'm making up, this kind of, I'm making up my life, and it's guiding me in certain ways.
Yeah, those, I totally get those. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think it's funny because people are going to walk away from this and they're going to start noticing that sort of, stacking decisions together and people with story. Yeah.
That's my hope, Diane, is because, one of the things, a big takeaway for today is I'm hoping that people we create our own realities. And what I mean by that is I'm working with 2 guys in the same position, and one guy is a micromanager and in on every, he's just in on every project and is smothering his people to death. In the same organization but a different region, I'm working with somebody else in the same position, and he sees himself as a philosopher, as a visionary, as a guided, and I'm exaggerating slightly, but actually not much. And his job is to delegate everything and just come in when needed and set the vision. And so it's fascinating to me how it's the same job. same job description, and yet the reality that they're creating with that same job in different places is completely different. The other people are not getting the guidance. One set of people is not getting the guidance that they're needing, and floundering and making huge mistakes, and it's chaos there. The other one, there's an order because the person's in on everything, but they're missing strategic opportunities because he's so in the weeds. So just as I'm using that with position, I wanted to say the same thing about entrepreneurs or small business owners, is that two people in the same head of that same business, they're making completely different decisions based off of how they view their role, how they view the business, how they view business in general. And if you can wake up to the assumptions and stories you're making, then you can see your blind spots more clearly and make better decisions.
This is so interesting. What's so interesting about it is I can think about situations that I have been in or am currently in where those blind spots are huge. Like I can see the other person's, but I always have to stop myself and go, okay, wait a minute. I probably have one here.
Hey,
I don't know what it is.
Diane, if you say that, you're still, 10 times further along than most people, because most people are like, Brit, I got somebody for you to coach, It's like, you can always see it for everybody else, But
it's so easy.
Yeah, it's like, how don't they see it? It's shouting at me, But
exactly.
it's the same thing as it's hard. We're so good at defending others from seeing it, and then they still see it sometimes, but then especially from ourselves. It's so rationalized, why we're right, where the other person's off, and the other person's feeling the same way. It's like, it's so clear where Diane is off over there. Why can't Diane see it? Why can't Brit see it? And it's just inherent in being human, and that's why it's helpful to have a tool. It's like, okay, how do I get out of my blind spots? And even then, I as much as I love the Clarity Compass, it's what I want to confess is if you can get a friend to work with you with it, it's so much better because of what we're talking about. Because in spite of having a great tool, it's still helpful to say, hey, Joe, Betty, will you talk to me about this? I've done this Clarity Compass, thought through this. Listen to what I'm saying out loud, and can you let me know? That's why I think these, the business owners and entrepreneurs really need a sounding board to, even as a friend, inside, outside the business, that'll really give you hard feedback.
No question. I totally agree with that. And then I'm wondering about like boards of small nonprofits, because you have people usually on a board. Most of the people on there are leaders in their world, right? And so then they come to the board because they want to impact change, but they bring all of themselves with them to that position, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so that interaction, so let's say it's a small business owner who, like I'll use myself as an example. So I'm a small business owner. It's only me. I don't have staff, so I don't have to worry about that internally. But if I sit on a board, now I'm having that interaction with other leaders, and now I my decision-making process is at play in communication with them, right?
Yeah. The hope is that when you have a board is there's a checks and balances there, so that every person's bias is checked with somebody else's clarity. It's like, thanks Diane for sharing that, but here's I see it a little differently, so that you have equal status on the whole on the board, other than maybe the chair or the founder.
Right.
But even there, that's what's fascinating is what we have to look at there is who did we invite to be on the board? Who gets invited, who over time the boards evolve. And I'm, work with a number of different boards and it's like, wow, how did this group to come together? And you start seeing how they selected each other. And then there's kind of like, there's not the diversity in the thinking. And so everybody's actually sharing their opinions, but the opinions start to become homogenous as the boards becomes homogenous.
Yeah.
So the same thing
Right.
plays out, but in a larger system.
Yeah. It's not good.
It's not good. Yeah, I think that's why, it's like, how do we consciously compensate? I don't mean to be derogatory, but I see us so much as automatons where I get up every day and I put on my shirt and I'm Brit and I do the Brit things and I say the Brit things and I do the Brit, da, 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 and I just go, I'm on automatic. And so some of this is, how do I wake myself up, and I'm slapping myself on my forehead. If you hear a little thumping, that's what that is. It's like, I'm trying to wake myself up to, like, no, let's just not be the default me, don't be the 2.3 version of me, be the 4.6 version of me. And it's so much about waking up and tools to wake up.
Yeah. I get that. So what was the catalyst that drove you to develop the tool?
It's back in 1984. I was actually a management consultant, and I just remember, I was 24 at the time, and I was like, oh, the world's so overwhelming, it's so complex. And then, and I just laugh at that because it was nothing compared to the complexity of the world today. And so, it was about 10, 15. It's like, it's easy back then. And so it was just, how do you create a tool that helps people not get lost in the fray? That, there were, even back in the 80s, there was too much information for us to assimilate. How do we organize it to try to make better decisions? And that was really the motivation behind it. It's especially in a business, but also business is so complex, interpersonal is so complex. And so how do we have a tool that has us navigate the complexity of overwhelming information? And that was the intention.
Got it. Wow. Well, it's so fascinating, and if I put myself like in the listener's place, because I am a small business owner, and I think, okay, well, this could be maybe a little overwhelming because it means having that gut check, that reality check, and admitting I have blind spots and all of that.
Yeah.
But I would think it's sort of liberating as well when you are able to, develop a better way of making decisions that's better for you and everybody else.
Yes, it is so liberating. In fact, I have to watch myself because actually the feedback that I tend to give to clients is mostly it's gut wrenching most of the time, actually, because people aren't really straight with us. It's just human nature. We're not. I was at the Gates Foundation yesterday and was talking to a guy, and he's like, yeah, I think I know where I'm at, but I don't. And I'm like, yeah, because people, it's just our nature not to be fully transparent, even when we think we are. We give some negative feedback as we think we're sending a hand grenade, but it really is it's a flower by the time it lands on the other person. So and to wake up to these things is hard and painful. But to your point is, I have to be careful because as people are in the pain, really, I am delighted, not because they're in pain, but because of that liberation that you're talking about. And so clients that can take it and take it and take it, they are so much more happy, more effective, operating at more with more joy and power. It's actually a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, you have to be able to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, that's why that vulnerability is a great word, because it's, I'd say when I can see a client getting sad and I can tell something shifted. It's one thing to say, a lot of times there'll be an insight or something that's like, well, yeah, I guess I really thought about that. And I'm like, ooh, that didn't land. But there's other times when people have one of these realizations that we're talking about here, and they'll be like, oh, wow, I can see why it's actually grieving, Diane, that happens because there's an ego place that thinks we're right and is attached to being right. And as we get let go of, oh, maybe I'm not as nice as I thought, or maybe I'm not as visionary as I thought, or maybe I'm not as great as an entrepreneur as I thought in this particular way, it's really sad because we have to let go of a piece of ourselves that's attached to that. But in that sadness and the grieving and letting go, it opens us up to new opportunities for the liberation that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting that. It is about having to let go of some of who you think you are. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's growing
There's
up.
a leader. What's that?
It's growing up.
It 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 really is. I mean, it's interesting. This was just yesterday too. I don't have a short-term memory, so I'm just pulling from things yesterday. But I said to the guy, it's like, you're sitting there and you look like a businessman, you look like you're an adult, you look like you're confident, you look like, and so when you do these things out of anxiety, I'm making up other reasons that you're doing it. I'm making up that you don't care about me. You're making up,
Right.
and I said, as your coach, I don't care. But other people are making up all these things that you're doing this, and in this example was somebody, he just talked really fast, and wasn't even letting it land on the other person. And so it's like they don't know where we got to was the vulnerability and the anxiety, but we look like we're grown up, but we're not. There's little parts of us. There's still little kids inside running big businesses.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. This is so great. So if there was one small change that someone could, make today so they were making more effective decisions, what do you think it would be?
Thanks for asking that. And whenever I'm asked questions like that, I'm really looking back at the interview so that it makes sense in the context of the discussions that we've had. And Diane, because of where you were able to go and take us, I feel I'm appreciating the depth of the conversation, and even what you said about vulnerability. And so the one takeaway I would say is actually humility. Humility in decision making, humility in how we're framing the world, humility in how we're interacting with each other. So there's some place that's humble within us that's saying maybe not all the assumptions I'm making are right. Maybe there's some big piece that I'm missing in the direction of my business, in the direction with my clients, in the direction of even if I have a couple people working for me. It's really kind of in keeping with our conversation today. I'd frame it in a deeper way than I might normally, which is that humility to say that I've got a lot of shortcuts out there in how I see life, and maybe some of them are blind spots.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. Humility. It's a great word and concept. Wow. Thank you so much for this. Would you let my listeners know, how they can get the book, how they can get in touch with you, what you got going on, so they can, reach out?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So the email address is info@clarity-compass.com. So it's info@clarity-compass.com. And if you want to give us a call here at the office, the phone number is 206-906-9856. Again, 206-906-9856. And then and actually you can just get the book on, probably the easiest way for you is to go to Amazon, and it's Clarity Compass, the Clarity Compass, and Brit Poulson. And either looking up my name or the book, you should be able to find it, and order it on Kindle edition or hard copy.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really, really just a great concept, and I think tremendously valuable for really anybody in any sort of leadership position, whether they're a business owner or a manager, supervisor, whatever they are.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Diane. I appreciate you bringing out the richness of it, and just in the questions you asked and the follow-up. It was a pleasure for me, but mostly I appreciate you really bringing out the best. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's I love having these conversations. I always learn a ton when I have them. So
I could tell.
I'm having fun, so the listeners, yeah, exactly. And I always like to thank the listeners, because that's why we're doing this thing, as well as our sponsors.
Yes.
Please remember to visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth to sign up for a free trial and get a free audiobook. Continue to prosper and be curious, and have humility and realize that we all have blind spots. And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
Hey friends, this is Jim Knight, former 21-year Hard Rock executive turned best-selling author and top 10 keynote speaker.
And I'm Brant Menswar, former frontman of Hollywood's most dangerous band turned top 10 motivational speaker and best-selling author.
We host the how-to podcast Thoughts That Rock, where we talk to rock stars, athletes, CEOs, astronauts, and even next-door neighbors who share their expertise and opinions. Together, we tackle the most interesting and challenging topics of today.
Whether you want to learn how to become more confident, how to deal with anxiety at work,
or how to write a hit song, or use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in life,
we've got hundreds of episodes to help amp up your life and move you forward.
Subscribe to Thoughts That Rock wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out evergreenpodcast.com for more information.